One of the kind of consolidating themes that we've spoke about and you mentioned a couple of times is community. So all of the work that you were just describing kind of relates to improving the community and bettering it through architecture. What's your ultimate goal when you think about, the fulfillment of your career in achieving success in community improvement? What's the ultimate goal for you? How do you define success in community building?
Well, I think for me it is because I'm an educator, getting architecture students to see a role for themselves in that process and to not think of it as necessarily just utilitarian. We have creative abilities. We can inspire people through what we do. So at the same time that we're meeting basic needs, I think we also need to be aspirational about what we're doing in those communities. I also think because many of architecture students don't come from low-income communities, and that giving people experience in how to listen well, particularly when there may be some holding back by people in the community thinking, well, I'm talking to an educated individual, I don't really know anything. In fact, the community members that my students work with are educators, right? They are teaching my students about what their daily lives are like, what it's like to live in these communities, what is it like to live in a place where you don't feel safe letting your kids go outside, and what is an architect's role in that. And I think, in some sense we as a profession have to understand a lot more about the processes that go into a place becoming not a great place to live, but also how do we turn that around? What's our role in turning that around? So for me, success would be having architects and others, allied professions, really being involved in turning communities into better places for people to live.
I started to realize that I had a strong proclivity towards transitional housing facilities, helping people through architecture. So what I ended up doing is worked for Habitat for Humanity during these summers as a volunteer.
Okay.
And then quit a job here at NASA doing space planning to go across to go across the country to volunteer for an architect designing transitional facilities, transitional homeless facilities. And from there, couldn't make a lot of money doing that, obviously. So went back to the professional world, and I was fortunate enough to have a Fulbright scholarship. I went back to Bratislava, finished my technical training in grad school there, and from there I came back here and started to teach. People assumed that I would be a professor and I would get my PhD and I would quit architecture per se and only teach, and I actually disagree with professors not having practical experience, because there's no book can teach you what it feels like to make a mistake on a rooftop when you're specifying the wrong EPDM, for example, and you have to sketch out the right solution.
Yeah.
So I continued practice. I obtained my license, and I was teaching at the same time, simultaneously, studios, and only 4 or 5 years ago I jumped into academia full time.
Okay. So that director, was there a few steps in between?
That's an interesting question, because again, even late in my career, I found that same flexibility was required when circumstances dictate change. So at the height of the recession, 2008, the real estate company I worked for bellied out. And I found myself facing a bleak future in that business, and decided that a change was needed. But I wasn't prepared to go back into a design profession. Having been a part of that, seen that, understood it, and being on the other side of the coin, I was looking for something very different. And I was also looking to move south, because it was getting pretty cold in New England. So
I hear you.
that was a factor. So that's what led me to looking for opportunities in the academic community. Even though I did not have any track record, I wasn't a professor or an administrator prior to that time, it was still an area I was very interested in. So when this opportunity at SCAD came up, I said, why not? It gives me a chance to move to somewhere a little warmer and work in an institution that was dynamic and forward-thinking and privately held is a very important part. They are able to make decisions quickly and very effectively. So that's how I ended up at SCAD.